Hola, buenas noches. Estamos con Chris Birch de Mödiphius Entertainment, los creadores de Conan y también de Achtung Cthulhu y otros juegos que, bueno, ya conocéis ampliamente. Okay, Chris, thank you for being with me in NetCon, the first digital convention in Google Plus. And thanks for your time.
It's my pleasure. Thanks for having
We,
me.
we have here many fans thinking about Conan and other of your projects. Mainly, they asked me about Spanish translations. We know you have scheduled a translation with No Solo Roll. And also here in Galicia, we are especially thinking about Infinity RPG
Yes,
because,
of course.
you know, I'm in Vigo Bay and they are just across the bay
Yeah, yeah.
there. So, you have plans to launch your games here in Spain?
Yes. Um, we haven't announced it yet. Well, yeah, no, we haven't announced it completely yet. But there's Achtung Cthulhu is currently being translated for Spanish,
Okay.
and Mutant Chronicles will be as well.
Yes, yes.
Uh,
Mutant Chronicles will be your first game. No, you have the Dust Tactics in
yes.
Spanish also.
Yeah. We don't know about Dust Tactics yet. We know for sure that Achtung Cthulhu and
Mhm,
Mutant Chronicles will be translated, and we're still discussing about Infinity.
mhm,
Obviously, because Corvus Belli are based in Galicia, and so we're still discussing whether they would do the translation, or whether we would work with we would do it ourselves, or whether we'd do it together, or so we obviously want to get it right, and it's very important that we get it right for the Spanish market. So it's going to come down to whether Corvus Belli believe they have time, and when we want to do it. So obviously the priority is get the English version finished, and we're still finishing the playtesting. So once that's done, it's kind of easier to have a conversation because obviously Corvus are very busy, so we would need to make sure it can fit into their schedule if they want to do it, and if not, then maybe we'd find our own team to translate it. Or maybe it's another publisher that already does big Spanish role-playing games that would take it on. So it's a matter of time, really. We have to finish the book in English before we can make any decisions because no one can start translating until it's finished.
yes, I know.
Yeah,
The first thing is to finish the game and then
yeah,
think about publishing it. But you know, we are some eager to it because they are home. They are our children. They are my friends.
yes, of course. Yeah,
So
yeah. No, we're going
and
to get it right. Don't worry. We'll work very hard to make sure it's a good offering. And we're even looking at doing the Kickstarter in several languages so that you can pledge for the German edition or the French edition or the Spanish edition, for example.
oh, that will be great.
That's kind of it takes a lot of work to organise because there's a lot of people involved, but we think it could be the right way to go. So
Yes, that's another point I wish to talk with you because I know you are a good, or well, you are viewed by us, the fans, as a good Kickstarter manager, and most of all, a successful Kickstarter manager.
yeah,
I pledged towards the Achtung Tulu game. I pledged towards your last Kickstarter, the Thunderbirds Kickstarter. and I like them both. There was many goals to achieve. There was, well, it was convoluted. It was very fast, and you were giving us the fans all the time. Sorry,
Yeah.
these hints towards the future of the
Yeah.
Kickstarter, so we
Yeah.
get excited, and I like it. It was wonderful.
Yeah, it's a great experience to run a Kickstarter. It's a lot of work. I mean, loads and loads of work, long hours. But it's great fun doing it. It's and it's great having everyone's feedback and all the passion and everyone's involvement through the month. So you kind of feel like a big family for that time. It's great fun.
Yes, the other time, the other week, I was a fortnight more or less ago. I was talking to James Wallace about games and about role-playing games and a lot of things, and we were discussing also this intergenerational thing about some games like Dungeons and Dragons, role-playing games of the past, of the present. And I was thinking that, hey, I have to take note of this to talk to Chris because he is doing the Thunderbirds Kickstarter, which is 50 years old.
Yeah.
That's almost 3 generations there.
Yeah, it's amazing, isn't it?
I
Quite, yeah.
I was amazed because, as I said you earlier, I was a kid when I watched Thunderbirds on the television here in Spain. It was called Halcones del Espacio, and I like it very much. It was a great show, and obviously for a 5-year-old, it was wow. You have all these explosions, all these
Yeah.
vehicles racing towards victory and towards an excellent rescue. You just be there in
Yeah.
your sofa viewing the TV and amazed.
Yeah, it was very well known for its explosions. There was a lot of explosions in Thunderbirds shows usually.
And well, what can you tell us about the board game? I have view a lot of things here in YouTube and there in Twitter, and also here talking Matt about the design, about the Chini Beats,
Yeah.
because he's the main designer about Pandemic, and he was talking how it was different from other of his games. But you as publisher, how do you feel the game?
So obviously it's a cooperative game,
Mm-hmm.
and it doesn't have any traitor mechanics because there were no traitors in Thunderbirds, and it's very much designed to be a great game for gamers, but also for the kind of geek mum and dads. So it's a perfect game to introduce the family to those kind of cooler games, because especially because the theme is really nice. There's not people. There's disasters, but it's not about people dying. It's about saving people from all over the world in really cool machines. So if you don't know the show, it's about a rich family in the future, which kind of looks a bit like the 60s, funnily enough, the 70s. And they go around the world from this secret island base, a bit like Richard Branson's, Secret Island Necker. So they launch from their secret base in the South Pacific in these incredible futuristic machines and go and rescue people around the world from all these big disasters. And there's a character called the Hood who is trying to steal their technology, their secrets, so he can sell it to the highest bidder and make millions. And So he's often engineering the disasters that you have to go and stop. And so the game is quite clever because it's split into two. So on one hand, you have several missions coming out as cards each turn. And you start with 3, so you've got 3 disasters that you've got to deal with before they get to the end of a track, and basically every turn they usually move another step further down the track. So you've only got a few turns to stop them, and so you need to move your characters around the board with the Thunderbirds. You need to invent some of the famous machines, the rescue machines that the Thunderbirds had, to help you, and different characters get different bonuses for different types of missions. There's missions, air, sea, and space. You coordinate your team together to make sure the right people are in the right place to have the best chance of completing the missions. And a lot of the time you've got to take risks because you just can't do that. You can't always have that perfect plan. Because what happens is another mission comes out and you've got to deal with that. And at the same time, there's another track, which is the Hood's sort of schemes, his evil scheme, and he's got 3 things he's trying to do, which means he'll win the game and you lose. And every time you roll the 6 on the dice, which is the sort of the symbol for the Hood, you don't get that. You don't get a 6, but the Hood moves. And there are certain cards that come up instead of missions that cause the Hood to move, and he will trigger various events that might cause one of your ships to break down or certain things to become harder. And if he reaches one of his schemes before you have completed it, you lose the game. So there's 2 sets of pressure on the players. You've got to deal with the missions, the kind of disasters that are unfolding, but you've also got to stop the Hood in his scheme. So you've got to move around. You're trying to figure out the best way to do stuff, and there's all this pressure building up on you. So it's a classic Matt Leacock game where I lost in 5 minutes the first time I played, and then we played again. It was brilliant. It was like, no, oh my god, I can't believe it. And it can happen, And so the game is very quick. Sometimes you can get a couple of games inside an hour easily. Sometimes it might take 45 minutes to 60 minutes if you really play, to the very last minute and just finish. But it's not really more than an hour, so it's brilliant. It's a really good timed game because you might well lose after an hour, but it'll be really fun losing, like a lot of the co-op games are. And then you want to try again because it is like a puzzle. But it's an ever-changing puzzle where it's all these exciting disasters, and if you know the TV show, they're disasters that are straight out of the TV show with characters and machines and people. So there's a lot of kind of exciting stuff going on, and you get all this great technology to use, and all the while your characters are improving because every mission that you succeed at, that you complete, you get some bonus tokens, which kind of are intelligence, or they're basically, the game effects that they give you an extra action. They give you re-rolls of a dice, like with intelligence and stuff, and they give you bonuses to dice rolls. So there's all these bonuses you can gradually build up that give you more chances at succeeding at the missions, or you might get kind of technology which lets you invent some of the cool pod vehicles, these sort of like rescue vehicles. So there's a lot of choices to make. It's I'd say it's a bit more complex than a Pandemic, but it's got such a lovely theme to it. It's got bright coloured plastic, cool machines and characters, and of course with all the expansions we've unlocked, there's a load of extra replay in all the expansions, as well as the final expansion, which lets one character, 5th player, take the role of the Hood. So you can actually have international rescue versus the Hood, and he can be trying to undermine international rescue at all the time and cause them all sorts of problems. So we're really excited what we've been able to do.
I see it. When I was there in the Kickstarter, I was starting to feel that the game was a toy first. It was this cool mini, and there's another cool mini, and then another, and this was whoa. I have this box full of models, of tiny models, not only of the Thunderbirds and the Tracy family, also about the mission vehicles and the special vehicles for doing the missions and all sorts of things that you can grab and feel and make. Whoa! It was wonderful.
Yeah. I think we're having a lot of fun designing them, because you have to remember that. I mean, like, this show's, especially for people who remember the show from when they were kids. You've been getting toys for these all the way through the years. I mean, like, you know, what would happen is the dads would introduce the kids to the TV show, and then you go out and buy the toys, and those kids would grow up and they'd become dads, and they'd introduce their kids to the show. It's gone on, and so it's brilliant to be. I mean, some of these vehicles have never been made as models before. Not even, there were some, you know, big Japanese model kits that weren't really available in the UK. And they didn't even make all the models in the show. So we've, you know, finally been able to make some of these massive machines. I mean, they're going to be pretty small for the mission vehicles. You know, will be about 3 centimeters. But there's some really cool kind of disaster machines that would be great to have just as a little kits. And they're all kind of one-piece models. Some of them will be like 2-piece, so they'll all be pre-assembled. So it won't be hard to you'll be able to just play straight away.
Yes. One of my friends want to ask about Conan specifically. He is a big Conan fan, and he's watching the game thinking, well, this is my game. So he asked me to ask you about it. About what does what Mödiphius think about Conan?
Oh, what do we think about Conan?
Yes.
So,
what do you? Why did you thought about the world of Conan, the savage world of Conan?
Yeah, I mean, I've always wanted to do a fantasy game, and when we started Mödiphius and we were doing Achtung, Cthulhu, there's so many fantasy games out there that are elves and dwarves, and you know, it's very hard to do anything different. And I was thinking, kind of, well, what is different? And I was looking at licenses as well, and you know, I kept coming back to, you know, as a kid, the only thing I knew was Dungeons and Dragons, and then it was Conan. And obviously that was from the Arnie films. But I'd also read some of the classic stories that were these great pulp, fun stories that were pretty hard, you know, about this tough guy, and he wasn't your kind of typical hero because he went out and killed people and took their stuff, and you know, he was a typical barbarian, and it was so, you know, it's so inspiring, the stories, and it's very different. There's not an elf in sight, no goblins, no halflings, you know, very little magic. The magic that is very dark and very sort of devious, and Conan hates it, really. Very weird. He's very wary of it, and so I just thought Conan was the sort of perfect alternative to all the other fantasy games out there. So we spent. It's the same people who look after Mutant Chronicles. So once we got the Mutant Chronicles license, we'd been talking about Conan, and looking at how we could do that, and it took about a year to do the deal. But I'm really glad we did it, because I think it's going to be a really, really exciting version of Conan. Obviously, there's been Conan games before, and the rule system we've got is very pulp and cinematic, and I think it's going to let you play Conan as you've always imagined Conan. The artwork is going to be incredible, because we've got people like, you know, the Spanish artist San Julian has drawn one of the covers, and Carl Critchlow, who did Judge Dredd and Judge Anderson. We've got Ken Kelly and Thomas Schiarello and Mark Schultz. I mean, like some of the really major names that are doing all the covers of Dark Horse for Conan, or that are just famous for doing the books from the original novels, all the original covers. So we decided to go crazy and basically make sure that all the artwork in the books, all the covers, is you just want to buy the book just for the cover. So it's going to be stunning. And we wanted to put together like one of the best art teams ever for a role-playing game. And we've got one of the a really amazing writing team with a top talent, and obviously we've got Jeffrey Shanks on board, who's a very major Conan scholar, and Patrice, who's obviously well known for the Monolith Conan board game Kickstarter. He was their sort of consultant who gave a lot of approvals. So the two of them together are making sure that it's very true to the stories, that it's very genuine Howard material, so we're really proud of the team we've put together. And there's lots more people still to announce. There's a load more artists that we're confirming, and some very big names that are going to blow people away. So we're building up to making it one of the most exciting releases of the year, I think. So
yes, we also are waiting to see a great monkey with battling with Conan in a cover or something like that. It has to be there. It's always in some Conan history. Conan battles a monkey. Well, about Mutant Chronicles this time. Mutant Chronicles is well, here in Spain is no, but there is very few people that knows it. I was a fan of the first or second edition. I don't know which we have, and I don't know if yours is perhaps third edition. I'm right?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
And we know that this is a strange setting, because Mutant Chronicles brings a lot. Cyberpunk brings some of the first miniatures wargaming. Right before there was Warhammer 40, and there was Mutant Chronicles, and Warhammer is also a big Spanish seller. So I was thinking that perhaps we can talk about what makes Mutant Chronicles special. What makes the setting so big? So it's the perfect word for it, because you don't have this small mindset in Mutant Chronicles. You have all sorts of things that get mixed in the game, no?
Yeah. I always say I think the thing that's most memorable about it is the guns are enormous, and the shoulder pads are even bigger.
Yes, that's right.
Yeah, it's in a way, because when it was originally designed, obviously, Games Workshop was out there, and there was and it was this sort of like it's a very it doesn't take itself seriously, but it is really dark and twisted, and I really love the fact because it is very diesel punk, which diesel punk as a word wasn't around in the 90s when it was. I mean, it was even designed late 80s in Sweden. But in the 90s, you didn't have diesel punk. It was called techno fantasy, and we're keeping that name because it's just a great name. And but the kind of whole diesel punk feel of it is because they've lost due to the sort of force of evil, the Dark Legion, they've lost a lot of the high technology they had in the 25th century, and they've had to resort. It's a bit like Battlestar Galactica, where the Galactica is the only ship that can keep going because it's all old computers that aren't connected to each other, and the old style phones, and it's all a bit clunky. And that's kind of how I imagine Mutant Chronicles. It's weirdly they've got a high tech version of diesel punk. They've got spaceships, and things have got massive rocket engines on them, and you've got a dude standing there with a double rocket launcher on his shoulders and firing them away happily, and you've got the Dark Legion pouring forth from these enormous citadels, and the classic Brotherhood who are fighting.
And the church in Mutant Chronicles is a strange church that, well, you don't see it in many games.
And fill in some of those holes and explain them. So there's a lot of secrets for fans to discover who remember the old books. But it's fast, it's furious. It's big shoulder pads, big guns. It doesn't take itself seriously, but it's got this very dark kind of noir feel to it. It's 1940s feel, dark, brooding cities filled with heretics trying to bring you down at every minute, and the corporations, the big corporations, are fighting the evil Dark Legion, but they're also fighting each other, and they're screwing over individual people. And you can just be this freelancer who's fighting everyone, and everyone's trying to get you. And occasionally you get a mission to go out and fight the Dark Legion, or to just make some money. And of course, it all goes horribly wrong. And it's got lots of kind of humor in it that is like very dark humor, and I think it's why it was so popular in Europe, particularly as well. And,
yes.
I don't know how big it was ever really in America, but I mean, I know Warzone, the miniatures game, was very big in America, and I think we're going to make the role-playing game really take over. We've got 17 books on the way over the next year, so it's going to be a busy release schedule, and loads of really exciting campaigns and stories, and that's just the beginning. That's what we funded with Kickstarter, but we've got more books, more adventures coming already, and lots of people working on them. So and the artwork that we're starting to see is incredible. We repainted a lot of the old original black and white artwork that was really strong, because I wanted there to be a link with the old and the new stories, and Peter Bergting, who was one of the original Swedish artists, his artwork was quite iconic, and had that real strong dark feel. So we've painted up a lot of that original artwork, but then we've also got a lot of new artwork as well. We're using a lot of the Paul Bonner artwork for the covers again, because they were such amazing covers, and they haven't aged in any sense in terms of the style. They totally say Mutant Chronicles. And one of my favourite pieces is the classic character Mitch Hunter, who's falling off a cliff, clutching a dog, his favourite dog, and firing back at you. So he doesn't care about the fact he's falling off a cliff. He's more determined to shoot the person who's pushed him off, probably, or chased him. And it's just, I think that just kind of over-the-top action is what it was all about. And we designed the game system 2D20 that is being used for Infinity and for Conan for Mutant Chronicles. So because we wanted this sort of really fun cinematic game system that would let you do big crazy stuff, and the game system wouldn't be complicated and painful to play.
Yes, one of the things that I liked a lot about original Mutant Chronicles, it was fast, it was furious, it was this big action-oriented game, and without these complicated tactics No,
Mm.
you have so many options in a tight rule set.
Yeah.
You can go full berserk and
Yeah.
fire all your ammo on a foe, or you can just snipe your way out a situation.
Yeah.
There was no overcomplicated rule
Yeah.
set, but it can, well, grab all sorts of things and make you play with them.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. And the great thing is now we're introducing vehicles and spaceships and a lot more detail to the world. So there's a lot more for people to explore, as well as huge campaign books. We've got 3 big campaigns that are coming, and tons of material. So we're going to keep people busy for years.
That's wonderful. I also, well, that will be perhaps last conversation before questions and answers. I have to remain that we have questions and answers activated, so everyone who's watching us could question us and we will answer.
Mm-hmm.
And well, Achtung, Cthulhu. Okay, that was your first game, I think.
Yeah.
And I like it very much. I went mad with that Kickstarter. I ordered, I think, the 2 campaigns, the main books, a lot of things.
Yeah.
I cannot afford one more than one shipment, so I'm still waiting. I don't,
Okay,
I don't mind.
Getting your
I don't
stuff.
mind because I am very, very, very happy because I have seen everything you have launched for it, and it's wonderful. It has this classic mythos aesthetic, and also it has the pop aesthetic on it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It has all this mixed up and in a good way
Yeah.
match.
Yeah. I mean, I've always said it's Acting Cthulhu. It's a bit like we made a role-playing game out of a big comic book, and the comic book doesn't exist yet, although we're talking about doing one. And I wanted it. It should always feel like it's this dark mythos story, but obviously it's set during World War II. There's lots of action. It is. You can play it more pulp, or you can play it more dark. Much more darkly, so that more classic mythos style. But the players, because we put 2 rule systems in Savage Worlds and Call of Cthulhu, you can play it either way you want. So the players do have a lot of options, and I think that's worked really well.
One of the things that attract me to Achtung, Cthulhu against another World War II Cthulhu games was it was packed with action right in the right places. You don't have to wait to Act Story 4 to get action. You have a little action in each chapter, and I'm now waiting to see the assault on the mountains of madness because it sounds wonderful. It sounds like a campaign. You can go to the mountains of the madness fully armored and grab that big penguins and beat them out.
Yes. You're definitely going to be armed to the teeth in Assault on the Mountains of Madness, and you're going to be up against a lot more. You've got the entire might of Nacht Wolf and Black Sun, our 2 big Nazi organizations. You've got the mythos, and you've got the elements as well. You're going to be fighting the elements because it's freezing cold. You need survival gear, and you've got to plan your expedition. And you're in the middle of a giant invasion, and it's a giant invasion of all the real military forces that existed that weren't in northern in Europe or weren't fighting in the Pacific. They were the military units that we know were back in England or back in America or somewhere, but they weren't fighting. And so in our Acting Cthulhu, They were really down in Antarctica, fighting the secret bases of the Nazis and the Mythos. And you've also got this giant aircraft carrier made out of ice that the British were going to build. It's called made out of pykrete, which was the idea they were going to mix wood chips with ice. And so it makes it very, very, very strong. And they were going to build this gigantic aircraft carrier so that the planes could, the fighters could follow the ships across the Atlantic, land on the aircraft carrier, refuel, and keep flying, and carry on to England. But of course, the planes ended up getting better fueling, and obviously not fighters, but they ended up being able to make do without the carrier. So it never got made, or did it? And in our world, it did get made. So you've got this giant aircraft carrier as a base with thousands of troops on board. You've got Russian submarines packed with tanks. You've got all sorts of frigates and destroyers that have been assembled from all over the world that again aren't involved in the battles in Europe. And so it's a very, very exciting beginning to the mission, and it starts on a small unknown island with a small abandoned Nazi base, which is where you discover all the clues. And so there's a lot of historical detail in it, and it's one of the reasons it's taken a long time. We also had some of the had to drop out at various points, and it's such an epic campaign. We wanted to get it right, which is why we've taken more time. And I mean, as you probably know, we went out to the backers in September, October, actually, I think, and said, look, you know, we're happy to ship whatever we owe you now, or we're going to give you something extra with your final shipment, because we really want to spend more time on these final two campaigns and just make them the most incredible campaigns you're ever gonna see. And I'm really, really pleased with what the artwork I'm seeing. The writing is just incredible. So I think no one's going to be able to believe it when they start playing them. So
yes, one of the things also about Achtung Cthulhu is that in original Mountains of Madness campaign there was a lot of stress put on preparation. I don't know if I'm talking about original Chaosium campaign.
Yeah,
I don't know if you read it or play it or something.
Yeah, I know it. Yeah, I know it well. I was reading it, and I very much wanted to dive into it in this case. So the preparation is really your first mission, where you discover clues about Antarctica, and then you're diving straight into the fleet, which is heading towards Antarctica, and the preparation really is the adventures that are happening aboard this giant carrier. I mean, I'm not going to say too much. I don't want to spoil it for people, but you really do get thrown into the deep end, and then you've got massive landings, and you've got various ways of going into the story. You could be parachuting in, going in a submarine, attacking, all kinds of stuff. And it's up to the GM, obviously, whether they want the players to be going in secretly whilst the invasion happens in the distance, so they're not involved in the battle, because maybe you want to have a much darker, more investigative story. And so it's such a vast continent. It's almost like a campaign world. There's so much going on. And
yes, it sounds.
Yeah.
It sounds
so we've pretty much.
Campaign.
Yeah, so you don't expect to be spending a few weeks kind of hanging around getting ready for the expedition, because it's already left without you.
One of the things that surprised me when the campaign of Kickstarter finally ended. It was that there was just a Kickstarter about Call of Cthulhu 7th edition. I don't know if you have prepared the books for the 7th edition, make them for the 6th edition, or simply made some quick,
yeah, sure.
Cover it.
we stayed with 6th edition because most people have got 6th edition or lower, and obviously when we did this Kickstarter 2 years ago, 6th edition was what was out and 7th edition wasn't ready, and we had to start writing. So what we are going to do is, I should say that it's actually very easy to convert to 7th edition or vice versa. I think the conversion rules are about 2 pages, maybe 4. There's very little changes that you don't need. Obviously, it's good to buy the 7th edition because it is the full new rules version. But if you've got 6th edition materials, it's not very complex to convert, so it's not an issue for people. Although any new books we produce are going to be produced based on 7th edition. So we've got a very big book about the Black Sun and Nacht Wolf coming out towards Christmas this year, which is going to have all their plots and secrets and base maps and the final battles with them and what happens at the end of the war as well. So we're going to be taking the timeline forward to the point where things could change as well, because we've kind of got a different ending to the war. So you can just play Achtung Cthulhu and the war ends the way we think it ended, or you can change history and go forward with the official Achtung Cthulhu storyline, which changes quite a lot. So.
Okay, I was just thinking that question because one of the talks I want to have with people here in these interviews is that, well, hard decision when you are an editor. If you wait for the newest edition, that will we do next year, or I will start waiting now that I have the authors, I have the time, I have the money. How do you respond to your fan base? How do you manage this?
You have to design. You can't force them to buy a book. Over the last year, the 7th edition wasn't available, so you can't say, well, you can't play this stuff until you get 7th edition. That would have been crazy. So we have to design it for the game that people have. And later on down the line, our goal is that if we update our books to 7th edition at some point in PDF, then everyone who's got the current books will get those updates for free. So the idea is that the full range is in 6th edition, and then eventually later on this year, the new books will start to use 7th edition. And then, we'll start to refresh all the books as they get reprinted. We would do 7th edition versions. So, which takes a long time because there's a lot of books. So we have to do it slowly. But the great thing is if I had, I wouldn't say, if I had the option to get the 6th edition version, now I'd do it because it's not complex to convert them once the 7th edition rules comes out. It's super easy. I can see for some games it can be very complex because they can end up changing the rules quite a lot, and you get a lot of changes in stats and skills and creature stats and stuff. And luckily, I think that's not the case with 7th edition, so it should be relatively easy for people.
Yes, that was because you as an editor, you have obviously hard choices in your hands. You have many choices, you have many projects, you have these authors giving you their works, telling you, please publish me. And one of the other questions I have for you is, how do you manage all these human potential?
Yeah. All the humans, all the people. It's a bit like herding cats because we have a lot of creative people. So, and we're talking maybe 50 artists working across all the different projects that we're doing, like Conan and Infinity and Mutant Chronicles and Achtung Cthulhu. And we have maybe 30 writers, maybe more. I haven't actually counted up. And you know, editors, and we've now got sort of 4 layout artists, 5 layout artists working on the various projects. I mean, all freelance. We have 1 full-time designer and full-time production manager who looks after all the development for Thunderbirds and the board games, and then myself, my wife. So we've got a kind of good, strong full-time team, and we're hiring someone else soon. So, but it is hard because people have problems, and so when you get so many people, so you know, maybe there's about 100 people working with Mödiphius in various capacities. You know, if you look at the whole team. And when you get that many people, at some point someone has a problem, you know, loses someone in the family, has an illness, breaks up with their partner, you know, has a financial disaster, you know, has a breakdown or can't cope, or decides they want to stop work, or wants to do more work, or takes on too much and they can't cope. So there's all kinds of problems that you get when you get a lot of people, especially creative people who often working from home as well. And so we have to be quite, you know, sensitive and work with people. And I always say to people, don't worry, we're not building hospital life-saving machinery. It's you know, obviously you want to stick to your deadlines, but you know, if someone's got a real issue, it's, you know, don't worry about it. It's you know, it doesn't really matter if it's another week late or you know, maybe a month. You know, obviously we've been later with Achtung Cthulhu because of there's a lot of people have been involved and various problems that have cropped up. And it happens, and you just have to get on with it and do the best you can, and cope with it, and explain it to people. And you know, it's why with Achtung Cthulhu we offered everyone some free shipping or some extra goods because we were late and we wanted to spend more time on it and give the writers more time. And you know, similar things have happened with Mutant Chronicles, that we had issues with artists and writers that have delayed us, but luckily we've been catching up quite fast now. And you know, we've been learning from that, and with our future games we're actually getting a lot more of the writing done, a lot more of the artwork done, so that if we do a Kickstarter, I mean, in the case of Thunderbirds, all the game was designed. The expansions were still in development, but were being finished off. But we were determined to ship the Thunderbirds game in August. So, you know, even during the Kickstarter, we were saying, look, sorry, we can't show you any new sculpts this week because we're getting the base game sculpts finished so that we can hit the deadline that we promised you all. So you're just going to have to make do with not seeing some stuff. And, you know, maybe we should have had some more sculpts done, but you know, we didn't think it would go that quick. So you know, it was definitely a faster Kickstarter than we even could really guess. But we stuck to our idea of, okay, let's stick to the plan. Let's get the basic game finished so that we don't miss that deadline, and then we'll have more time to focus on everything else. So yeah, when you're running a project like this, you've got to kind of be good at understanding people and working with people and being diplomatic and sorting out problems, and you know, and you know, you've got to be good with people and love people, and you know, want to help them, and just be good at understanding how to help people get around their problems so that, you know, that they can do the work for you. And that's a constant challenge. You know, it's every day there's something that you have to deal with, and as you get more people involved, that, you know, gets more and more complex. But I love it, actually, because I think people are amazing, and I love supporting writers and artists and helping them do more and more work. So
okay, so thank you. And well, there's one last thing here in my raw shell that I want to ask you is that if you know or if you want to know some Spanish games and what you think about them.
Oh, you know what? One of the ones I do particularly like is I can't remember. I don't know what it is in Spanish, but it's the Small Detectives of Monsters.
Yes, Pequeños
Yeah.
Detectives de Monstruos.
Yes.
Small.
It's a very
Yes, a good game.
Yeah, it's a very beautiful book. Very very nicely created, and I think it's a really great concept and a really great package. And I think the guys who produced it did a really fantastic job on that game, and the idea of how adults play it with kids is really really strong, I think. And I think creating games that can be played with younger children is really fantastic. So that's that's my favorite actually.
Yes, that was an idea that here in the Spanish market it wasn't done. We have many types of game, but nobody think about a game you can play with your children. Not in the role-playing version, at least.
Yeah,
In the board game version, you can play with your kids. You usually
yeah,
play board games with your kids, but
yeah,
in role-playing games, no. We usually play with our friends, and that was all. And
yeah,
there was this time when I went to the shop and I saw the game and I was shocked. I have read about it before buying it,
yeah,
but I was out. I was only in a shock because this was so new. This was so raw. I didn't know how to react. I
yeah,
finished buying it. I have no children, but someday I will. And I was thinking, hey, this is a good game to play with children. And there are here in Spain there are more authors doing work
yeah,
in this matter. They are working in role-playing games specifically for children, specifically for grown-ups who want to play with their children,
yeah.
and it's wonderful. I think.
Right. Yeah, no, I wish there was more in especially in the English language doing that as well. I mean, there's a few people starting to do children's games, but it's quite a hard job to get right, because it can be too kiddie. I mean, one of the things why Thunderbirds was so good is it didn't try and talk down to children. It was a kind of cool show with adults doing cool things. There was no little kids in it, or little monsters, or whatever, little robots. It was all adults being cool. And I remember when I was a kid, I wanted to be Han Solo. I didn't want to be Luke Skywalker. And I think it's a real tricky thing to get right, to get a game that kids actually really enjoy. So
Yes, because one of the things that make, for example, Thunderbirds great and some other shows. Here in Spain, we have a similar show of, animation called La Bola de Cristal, which also didn't treat children like children. It
yeah,
treat children like people who can think because children can think, and when we were children, we like to watch these shows that didn't treat us as children because
mhm,
you feel like an adult,
yeah,
and
yeah,
that was great about Thunderbolts and all the Super Mario Natation
yeah,
films
yeah,
because
right.
they didn't treat the audience or the target audience as well as children.
Yeah, yeah. No, I agree. Yeah,
Okay. Here in Spain, one of our viewers is asking me what time is it, and it's about 11 in the night. It's very dark here.
Yeah.
Well, I don't know. I will go to bed soon.
Okay.
That's the most I can say. And I don't know if there are any questions here. I will ask to our Spanish audience. No sé si alguno de los que nos estáis viendo ahora mismo en directo tenéis alguna pregunta. Si no, como siempre, la podéis dejar en el canal y intentaremos que Chris las responda. The same to our English audience. If you aren't seeing us at the moment, we will try to answer later. So if you leave your questions in the channel, I will try to reach Chris and answer some of them. If it's right with you, Chris.
Yeah.
Okay, we don't have many much questions left. I have touched all aspects I wanted to talk with you. I don't know if you want to talk to something special, something to say to us. If you have some project you wish to say that you will launch in soon or something?
Well, we're launching. We're going to be launching a big board game. Our next board game. We're announcing it in a few weeks' time, and it's with another big name designer, and it's an exciting gaming world. I can't say too much more now. But I think people will be very excited when they see who's doing the game with us, and the plan that we've got.
So if you let me, I will finish the interview. I will say goodbye to our Spanish viewers and thank you to our international viewers as well. Gracias a todo el mundo por vernos. Ya sabéis, darle a que me gusta, suscribíos, esas cosas, siempre. Y nada, nos vemos en la próxima entrevista y muchas gracias. Thank you very much, and we will see you in future interviews.